Hi guys, I'm Krish and you're watching Code with Krish. In today's video, we're going to learn about App Lab. App Lab is a category in code.org in which you can create applications. So let's get into it. To get started, first go to code.org with your browser. Once you've gone to code.org, on the top in the bar you'll see a sign in button. Click on the sign in button and sign in with the account which you are going to use. Once you sign in with your account, on the top same bar, you'll see a button which shows new project. You click on that, it'll show you a variety of labs. You'll choose the app lab. And once you click on to app lab, you can see in this window there are a lot of things. So first, go to the top and rename your project. Click on the rename button and name it whatever you want. I'll name it intro to app lab. And then click on the save button or just click on enter. Once you've done that, now here you can see in this window there's a workspace, a toolbox, and this phone shaped screen. And in the bottom there's a debug console. So in the workspace, you'll be putting all the coding blocks in and doing your coding. And in the toolbox, you'll find the different blocks you'll use for the coding, the UI controls, data, control, variables, canvas, total, math, and functions. The UI controls is basically will be used to adjust the to adjust and change through coding the different parts of the user interface like the buttons or the drop downs or images, which we'll go through now. Here the data section. This data section is relevant to the data tab. You have the control, variables, and etc. and other tabs. Now in the code window, you will see that there's also a debug console at the bottom. The debug console will tell you what your mistakes are in the code, if there are any, and it'll tell you on which line it is so you can rectify the mistake. Now you'll see here there are different tabs. A code tab, which is this selected tab, and then a design tab. In the design tab, you'll be designing your user interface, and there's another tab called the data tab. Now in the data tab, this data tab is relevant to this data section in the code screen. Now in today's video, we'll just look over in the code area and we'll go to the and mostly focus in the design section. In the code screen, you can see that in these different tabs, like I told, UI controls will be used to change or adjust things in the or get relevant information from the user interface, from buttons, text inputs, or text labels. The data section will contain the blocks required to edit the data section. The control has the different loops and other blocks required for controls. And there is a variable section which has the things to control variables and different variable blocks. And then you have the canvas block. This canvas block is relevant to one of the design elements which we'll go through soon. And the turtle will be used to draw on the screen on the canvas. Then you have the mathematical section. Here you have the mathematical operators which you can use in your coding. And then you have the function section. A function is basically a block of code inside which you can put a set amount of blocks of code which you can reuse in any part of the further application or in the further lines of code. So if I want to create a navigation code, I can just write navigation here in the name of the function. Go to UI controls. Inside this, I'll place whatever I want, and like if I want to navigate to a different screen, and then I'll choose the screen. Then I choose the on event. If there's a button, I'll click on the button. the click event, and then I'll choose the different screen I want to navigate to. And then I can call back this exact function wherever else I want to do those, to do the code I've put inside it. So basically it is a kind of a storage for code blocks. Now let's go to the design tab. In the design tab, there's also a workspace section and a design toolbox. And there's this phone screen which is available on all tabs. Now this phone screen is the screen where you'll be putting all your elements and designing your application itself. And if you go to the design section, if you now by default the screen is selected. Now here you can set the background color of the screen, whatever color you want to set. I'll just go with a default white. And you can choose an image also if you want to put any image by for your application in the background, which I don't need to right now. Now there's also a drop down in the design toolbox called the theme. The theme will be used to edit the set colors for all the elements. You can choose whatever you want, or you can individually design the colors, but this makes it easier if your choice of colors for each element is available here. Now let's go to the elements. Now these elements will be used to design your user interface for the application. The first one we have here is a button. Now we know what a button does. It is a clickable element of a user interface. All of this new project button or this duplicate text here, all of these are buttons. These buttons can perform a certain action when you click on them. Now you click on the button. Here you can see in the property section, you'll see there's an ID. This ID, this exact text which will put in here will be used to reference this exact button in your code. If you want to change anything with it or want to do some action when the button is pressed. Now in the text part, you can put whatever text you want the button to display. So if I put in intro, it displays intro. If I want to, write, once you sign in with the account, you'll see on the top bar a new project button. You click on this and you select the app lab from the list. Once you can see there's this window here. First, what you have to do is rename it to whatever your name is. I'll just keep it as intro to app lab. Now you can click on save button, or you can just do an enter. Both will save it. Now in this screen you can see there's a workspace, a toolbox, a phone shaped display here, and a debug console. So the workspace is where you'll have all your code elements like the blocks. Like you can drag and drop all the blocks here, and you can do your coding here. And the next we have the toolbox section. Here it contains all the buttons required for your programming purposes or your coding purposes. Then you have the debug console. If there's any kind of error with your code, it shows your error, what error you have done and on which line is it located on. Like on line 1, either on line 1 or on the next line. So whatever line it is on, you can keep it works like that. And now and it shows what mistake you have made. Now here on the side you can see this display shaped as mobile phone. This will be your app screen. This will be where you're gonna be working on your application. Now just above that you can see there are these 3 tabs: a code tab, the tab we are on right now, a design tab, and a data tab. In the design tab you have all the elements required to design your user interface, and in the data tab it contains data which we will go to next, and this is not what we need to focus on now. It contains different data files which you can use. but we're not going to use that right now. It has a data browser and a data library. Today we're going to be focusing on slightly on the code window, how what is it exactly, and the design, mostly on the design window. And in the code window, you can see you have different sections here inside the toolbox. Now these different sections contain code blocks for different purposes. The UI control section has the applications which the blocks, not the applications, sorry, the blocks which will allow you to adjust or reference any object from the user interface, from the user UI or the user interface. And here you have all the code blocks relevant to UI controls. Then you have the data section. This contains everything relevant to the data tab. The control section, this has the if blocks, if else blocks, for loops, the different control blocks. And in the variable section, you have everything relevant to variables. Then you have the canvas section, the total section, which you will be used to draw for drawing purposes. The math section, which has all the mathematical blocks you can use for calculations. And the function sections. A function is basically a block of code that allows you to repeat certain other blocks of code. Like if I create a function called my function, and if I want the text to be changed whenever I do this, whenever I call this function, I can just call the text input, which is not there right now. Whatever the ID is, here you write your ID inside the double inverted commas, and here you can put in your ID. Then you have the text here, whatever text you want to change it to, like hi, and then you can just call back this function wherever you want using the my function. This can be, or this one with a parameter, you can call it back wherever you want, which it'll reference this exact amount of code, so exact blocks of code. So that can be used to repeat a certain block of code again and again in your code if you do not want to create too many lines of code and you want to keep everything organized. That's all in the code section. Now let's go to the design tab. In the design tab, you can see the workspace and the design toolbox. The workspace contains the properties and the design toolbox contains the elements. Now the first element we're going to be working on is the button. Now you can just drag and drop a button onto the screen. Now you'll see in the properties, it shows the properties relevant to a button. Now you have the ID of the button. You'll be using this ID to reference this button in the code. You have the text, what text will the button display. You can write it as hi or a button or whatever text you want to put inside it. You have the width, which adjusts the width of the button. You have the height, which adjusts the height of the button. You have the X position, which adjusts the position in the X axis. So like this. So if I adjust this, you can see it moves it horizontally, and the Y position adjusts the position in vertically. So in the vertical manner. I can just place it here. Now you see. Now I'll go to the text color. The text color is the color that will be used to put the color of the text which will be inside the button, like this button text. You can change the color using this part, show button. The color changes. I would keep it as white. Now you have the background color. The background color will be used to change the background color of the button. You can keep it as an orange or a black or a white or any kind of color you want. The font family will be used to change the font of the text, the text which is inside the button. It has a set number of font which you can choose from. And then you have the font size, which changes the size of the font. The text alignment, the left fixes the text to the left side, right fixes it to the right side, center fixes it to the center, and justify is not for use now. It can be used in paragraphs. I'll give it a center, and this image will be used if you want to set an image. background. So if I have the icons here, you can go, if I click on this home button, you'll see there'll be image on the background. The color will still remain, but there'll also be an icon. So if you do not want a text here, you can remove the text completely. You can have an image here and whatever background color you want, like a light orange color, and you can see the home icon will be visible on the button and become like a home button. So that's what you can change here. You have the icon color, which you can change to, you can use to change the color of the icon. You have the border width, which changes the width of the border. I'll keep it as 0. And you have the border radius. The border radius we use to change the radius of the button. Like if I increase it, the button will become curved. If I decrease it, the button will become a perfect rectangle with sharp edges. You can keep it a slight curvature. And the hidden button here will be used to hide or make the element visible. On the top, on the side, you have these 3 buttons. A delete button, which removes this object. A duplicate button, you should duplicate this item. And apply theme button. Now apply theme, what it does is you can choose a theme from here, and then you can apply that. If you click on the button and you click on apply theme, it will apply the theme which you have selected. So right now it doesn't really match, but if I click on apply theme, you'll see the background color changes of the button itself. And if I go back to the default, it changes automatically. Now that's the button element. Now for the next element, we have the text input. The text input element is used to get a text input in the form of a string or a text from the user. The placeholder will be a text visible in the background of the text input, which will be slightly translucent in a gray color. You have the same properties with the width, the height, positioning, the x and y axis, text color, background color, font family, and the different text related colors and border related text related properties and border related properties. Now the placeholder, what we can do is you can put whatever placeholder you like. If I keep it as a name, so it tells the user what exactly you want the user to input here. And once the user tries to type something, you see that the text disappears, the placeholder disappears. So it is just there when the text is blank. So if I write any kind of text in here, you'll see it's not there, but if I remove it, it comes back. Now for the next element, we'll move on to the label. The label is very simple. The label's only purpose is to display a certain text. Now here in the text property, you can change what text it displays. I can write intro. Now here the width, what it does, the width will change, this width property will change the width of the container of the text and not the text itself. And you can adjust this to whatever you like. And this can be used if you're increasing the size of the text. I can increase this, and then I can change the font size to become bigger and then fit. But if I do not want it to be something like that, I need just keep a certain size and then decrease this to match with this. So it can be used if you want to fit a large text inside this. And you have the same property as the others, the text color, background color, font family, and the borders. That's the text, that's the label. Now you have the drop down. What the drop down does is it basically gives you a list of options to choose from, option 1 or 2. When you click on this, you can see there's an options property. Here you can just click on it, type any option. If I can write option 3, enter, another option 4, and you just click on enter to add more options, and you just type whatever you want. So like the name, height, whatever. Now these are the options list. And if I run it, I click on the drop down, you see it has the options which I put inside, and the user can select either one of these. Now the next property is the index. The index will choose what option is visible by default to the user. So if you increase it, you can see it changes which options are visible. If you want, it can keep it at blank, which is the -1 option, or you can choose whatever you want. And in programming or coding, mostly counting starts from 0. In some places you can start from different values, but mostly in adjusting values or sizes or referencing any kind of numbers, it usually starts from 0, and 0 being referred as 1. So here, the list of the options you can choose. I'll just keep it as option 0. You can change it to -1, keep it blank, and it has those same options: borders, border adjustments, text adjustments, positioning, and size adjustments. Now the next element is the radio button. Now the radio button is a button which can be only used to select one item, so one option. So if I just put a label here beside it, and now if for example I'm trying to do a text, if I'm trying to make the user select something, and if I want them to select one of these, so the list of the options whichever there are, whatever radio buttons you use for them, if there are 4 or 5 or however many you want, just ensure those radio buttons which are going to be used for that same purpose, for those choosing one of those options, ensure all those radio buttons to be used are in the same group. Like if you select the radio button, you can see there is a group ID here. Change the group ID's numbering to adjust which groups they are in. So it only allows you to select one, because if I change the group ID of each 1 to 2 and 3, you can select all of them. So like if I want to select one text option from the option section, I will just keep them to 1. But if I have another thing called name, for example, I'll put the radio buttons here and the options beside them, whatever options are there. Now I'll ensure that I change the radio buttons group to 2. So all of these radio buttons group will be changed to 2. Now if I run it, you'll see the options part, I can only select one from these, one from these, any one. And here in the name I can select any one. So in whatever group you are in, if you can choose only one. So ensure whatever categories, options you have, multiple options, ensure all those radio buttons are in the same group if you want one option to be selected. Now for multiple options, we have another element which is the draw checkbox element. Now the checkbox element is an element which which can be selected we can select multiple options, through which you can select multiple options. So there is no group ID for checkboxes. You can see here, this is the ID, the width and the height, X position and Y position, the hidden, and now you will see there's a option, another option here called checked. Now this shows if the button is checked by default or not. So you can set it to no, not checked or checked, whatever you want, and you can add multiple of these. You can duplicate this. And whatever text you want. Now you will see if I run it, I can select multiple of these. I want all 3, only 2, only the middle one, a top in the middle, a top in the bottom only. So you can adjust the checkboxes, can be used to select multiple objects, multiple options, and you can reference which one is checked or not using the checkbox elements checked value in the code if you want to see which option the user has selected or which options the user has selected. That's the checkbox. Now the next element is the image. The image is very simple. It has an image which you can fit inside it. It has the width, height, x, y positioning, the borders, the hidden, and now you'll notice there's an image value, image property, and a fit image property. The image property contains the image you want to fit. So if I choose any kind of icon like a smiley face, and I choose the fit image to be a fill, to show it property, I'll have to change the size. If I make it really long and wide like this, so now you see, if it is on fill, it will just adjust itself to the stretching of the container itself. But if it is on cover, it will just become large and cover the total distance of everything of the container. And if you do contain, the contain will have a certain amount of spacing from the edges adjusted, and that will remain a permanent value. So no matter what size you change, it will change along with it. It'll just increase its scaling and not the shorten or the stretching. So if I make it long, the same size horizontally, and you'll notice it doesn't change its height or its width. It just changes its total overall scaling. And if I just choose a none, it just enlarges itself to the size of the image and just fits as large as it can. It's something you do not want. I'll keep it as contain. That's the image. Now you have the canvas. Now the canvas's properties can be edited through this section in the code. Here you have the different buttons to change the properties or do coding relevant to this canvas element. And the canvas is basically a place where you can draw. Here you only have the width, height, positioning. And to draw in the canvas, you can use the turtle section. It has the different blocks used for drawing. And if you go to design, you'll see there's the screen element. Now the screen element cannot be added to this display. If you click on it, it creates a new screen. These new screens are different windows you can see in the application. So if I go to the code, I'll show you how it works. So if you just do an on event, just click the button and just a screen. Button 3, there are different events here, what kind of thing you want to do. Mouse over, mouse out. It sets it to screen 1. And now if you change the screen, it happens. So now you can set the screen 1 and screen 2. Screen 1 is the one we are currently on. So click on screen 2, and if I run it and I click on this button, you'll see that the screen changes completely. That is the purpose of having different screens. You can have different windows to your application, but right now we don't need the screen 2. I'll just delete the screen. And now the next we have is a text area. Just clear some space. And the text area is something where the application and can also have some text here, and then the user can also give name here. You can give a certain text here. If I just do this, so when I run it, I can also edit this block and click on this, and then here I can type whatever I want, and then if I reset it, it just works like that. So it keeps the text here. So it's a text editable by the application and the user, and it has the same properties related to the height and width, positioning in X and Y axis, colors of text in background, and different other text adjustment properties. Now here is another element another property, it is called a read only. So if I click on this, the user can only read this, and if I uncheck this, they can also edit this. If I keep it as read only, the user can only read it, he cannot edit it. But if I uncheck this, I can come in here and edit whatever I want. And the next element will be going to is the chart. Now the chart can be, the chart has to be connected to some data here, and you can program this using the data section here. You can program the chart using the data section and using getting data from this data window. And the next you have here is the slider element, and the slider element is very simple. It is just as the name suggests, a slider. Now you can use this to have a value set by the user. So if you're creating an application where the user can design an image, you can set a slider for the transparency, and the code you can adjust the set value to be the amount of transparency for whatever the user is designing. That's one example. And now for the last element we have is the photo select. The photo select is very simple. If you click on this button, it allows you to select a photo from your device, and those are the elements which we have here. It also has different properties and has an icon size. Now you can increase the size if you want the icon to be larger. You can decrease it if you want it to be smaller. And those are all the elements that Code.org provides you to create a user interface. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video.